Hello, people. Welcome back to another video by your good friend, the Big Anarchy, Chad Marco, Super Chad Marco. So before I get started, make sure you attack the like button, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And let's talk, man. So recently, there has been renewed interest in the murder of deceased rapper Tupac Shakur. If you don't know, Tupac was a big rap superstar in the early to mid 90s. He also starred in some very good movies like Juice, Poetic Justice. I think, what was the other movie? Above the Rim. Very, very talented, hardworking rapper. And who knows, I mean, really, man, you want to talk about someone being snuffed out in the prime of their life. He was killed when he was 25 and with just limitless potential and great work ethic. Could do the type of guy that could do whatever he put his mind to. Really a great loss, not just for hip hop, but just for the art, just in art, period, right? He was the very definition of an artist, but there's been renewed interest in his murder that occurred, I believe, in 1995 or 96. And they just arrested someone in connection with his murder. Now, I'm not too surprised about this. I guess I'm a little surprised that they decided to go ahead and move forward with the indictment and, trying to, I guess, take this guy to court. But it's happening, and normally I wouldn't speak on this because I just thought the truth surrounding Tupac's death was common knowledge at this point, right? But then I've been on 4chan and I've seen a few threads, people talking about it, and I'm like, people really are surprised or don't know what the fuck happened. I'm like, what? Like, y'all really don't know? It's like, the information is out there, but I guess everybody don't watch the same interviews and stuff that I do. So I say, you know what? Just in case any of my fans or anybody who watches my channel doesn't know, I'll give you a quick breakdown of what happened in regards to the murder of Tupac. So you should be aware that Tupac went to prison for a sexual assault case, a very controversial sexual assault case where, a lot of people believe that, he was wrongfully convicted, but that's a whole nother story. He was in prison for a while, and Suge Knight, the CEO of Death Row Records, stepped up to help get him out of prison. Pay his bail or whatever. And of course, the stipulation of Suge helping him get out of prison was to become a death row artist, right? So Suge put up the money to help get him out of prison. And once Tupac got out, he didn't waste any time. He signed with Death Row and started recording records immediately. And so now the thing about Death Row Records, Death Row wasn't just a record label. They were also heavily affiliated with the Blood Gang in California. So there were a lot of like gang activity within Death Row because they some of the artists were gang affiliated. They had gang members for like protection and bodyguards doing various jobs and things like that. So there were a lot of gang members involved with Death Row Records. And so there was an incident where some Death Row Records associates got robbed by some Crips. Now, Crips, they're another gang that I believe originated out of California. The Crips and the Bloods, that classic war story between these gangs. So yeah, these Bloods who were affiliates of Death Row Records got robbed by some Crips. One of the Crips was named Orlando Anderson. I think his street name was Baby Lane. And allegedly, he was one of the Crips who had participated in this robbery where they stole the chains of these guys from death row. And so that happens, and it's known that it happens, but, time kind of goes by and nothing, like there's no retaliation for it. So Tupac, at this point, again, he's with death row. And so that means that he's basically affiliated with all these gang members and whatnot, because he's with death row. So he ends up going to Vegas to see a Mike Tyson fight. He was good friends with Mike Tyson, and so he wanted to go see him fight. They went to the fight, and after the fight was over, I believe they were in a casino area. And then somebody got back to Tupac and said, "Hey, that I guess one or some of the guys, no, I think they were specifically talking about Orlando, and saying that one of the guys that had robbed the guys from death row is right downstairs in the casino." So Tupac immediately just runs over to the guy, Orlando, and starts fighting him. And this whole altercation gets recorded on the security cameras in the casino. And so basically Tupac and his entourage, they jump Orlando. They beat him up right there in the casino, and then they leave. So later on that night, Tupac with Suge, they get changed because they're about to get ready to go to this. They're about to go to a party, and so they're riding in the car. And this all happened in Vegas. They're riding in the car, and then another car pulls up beside them, and then an arm comes out with a firearm and just starts shooting. Tupac was on the passenger side. And so he got hit the most because the car with the shooters was on the right side, and the car with Tupac and Suge was on the left side. And Suge was the driver, which means that Tupac was on. Oh, I hit the mic there. Tupac was on the right, so he got hit with most of the shots. And so they lit the car up, and then they sped off. And so Suge, his first reaction was to try to get Tupac to the hospital. And so at that point, Tupac was still like lucid and aware. He was hit multiple times, but the damage wasn't completely done. Because you start bleeding out and shit like that. So he was still aware, and Suge said like he was still joking and all that. But his condition got worse once he got to the hospital. And they were able to keep him alive for about a week. But then his mother decided to take him off of life support, which is kind of interesting because it's a possibility that Tupac could have actually survived. But from the stories that I've heard is that Tupac would have been in real bad shape even if he would have survived. Like he had he would be like they had to remove one of his lungs. He lost a finger. I think there was like something would have been wrong with his vocal cords or something. Like he was fucked up. But he might. It seems like based on the stories that I've heard that he had a chance. He could have survived, but his mom wanted to take him off life support because he was in just such bad shape. And so, of course, he died. Right. Now, the guy who killed Tupac, Orlando Anderson, Baby Lane, for the longest time, everybody knew what happened. Like, the streets knew what happened because it wasn't very hard to connect the dots. It's funny because for the longest time, Tupac's murder was kind of seen as this big mystery that would never be solved. But when you start actually learning about the events and who was connected and who knew who and everything. It's like, just for instance, one of Eazy-E's artists, before he passed away was BG Knockout, who did the famous Real Compton City G's diss with Eazy-E. He was good friends with Baby Lane. He was good friends with Orlando Anderson. Like, it's funny, like, when you learn about this shit, like how everybody kind of knew each other, right? And so the streets knew what happened, but you know, the street code, you don't talk about it, you don't snitch, you just go back, you get revenge and things like that. So after Tupac died, there was basically a lot of like retaliation shootings. There was like gang wars in California after Tupac had died, because of course people wanted to retaliate because Tupac was heavily affiliated with the Bloods, and he basically got killed by a Crip. So of course there was like shootouts and things of that nature after Tupac died. But the thing is, Orlando Anderson never got killed as a direct result of a retaliation for Tupac. Orlando Anderson died in a completely unrelated incident. I forgot the specifics of it, but I think it was like somebody owed him money and he tried to run down on him and he got shot. But Orlando died soon after, I think maybe like a year or two after Tupac died or something like that. But he died not too long after Tupac, but it was completely unrelated to the whole Tupac situation. You know, he basically died in a different street altercation. And so this was known in the streets for a while, but it was just never talked about. But now in this whole era of, you know, podcasting and interviews, you got a lot of rappers and artists and people from the music industry who do these interviews with like Vlad and Say Cheese and The Art of Dialogue. And a lot of these guys who were around these situations are now revealing a lot of key information about who was involved. And the person that they've arrested is actually the uncle of Orlando Anderson, or Baby Lane, Keefe D. And he talked about the whole shooting in a Vlad TV interview and probably other interviews as well. And I think that he talked about it in a book. Now, for some reason, he thought that he would be immune to being, you know, indicted in the murder or charged for the, you know, in any way for the murder of Tupac. And I think that's because he first gave up this information as part of an agreement when he was facing jail time. And so he was basically like, okay, I'll give you information on the Tupac murder as long as I don't go to prison for what I did over here with these drugs, right? And so I guess based on that, he felt like they couldn't charge him with anything. So ever since then, he's been talking about it in all these interviews and he re-put it in his book. But basically, yeah, he was the uncle of Orlando Anderson. And he was in the car with Orlando when he shot Tupac. I think he was in the backseat. And in fact, I think the story is that he gave Orlando the firearm to shoot Tupac, because I think, and again, I might have certain details wrong here, but I think Orlando went to when he went to Vegas, he didn't have a gun. So Keefe helped get him a gun to go kill Tupac. And so that's who they've arrested in connection with the murder of Tupac Shakur, and is the uncle of Orlando Anderson, who is the alleged trigger man. Now, there are also other theories that Keefe D might have been the trigger man, and that Orlando was just in the car. But from Keefe's perspective, from his side of the story, he say that Orlando shot him while he just happened to be in the car. But some people think it was the opposite. And I think there was another guy who was in the car too, but I think he's dead. He's dead too. The only survivor of the whole situation, as far as who was in the car that shot at Tupac and killed him, is the uncle, Keefe D. And that's who they've arrested. But that's basically what happened with the murder of Tupac. It's very simple. And I had to make this video because it's crazy how I'm still seeing people who believe in like these different conspiracies and theories. Like you still got people who say that like Puffy has something to do with it, Puff Daddy, P Diddy, right? Because of the whole East Coast West Coast rap war between Biggie and Tupac. Some people think Puff Daddy has something to do with it. Then you got people who think Tupac's still alive, and then some people think the FBI took him out because he was a militant black man that was going to organize the blacks to take over America. I see all these theories, and it's crazy because the information is out there. If you just go look for it, there are so many people now from that era that are connected to the situation in one way or another that would just pretty much lay out the whole story. It's very I hate to break it to you, but it's very simple. Tupac went to go fight Orlando because he robbed some of his death row homies. And later that night, Orlando came back and shot Tupac. It's really that simple. It started from a fight. It started with a robbery, which led to a fight, which led to a shooting, which led to Tupac dying. I mean, that's it. It's no conspiracy. It ain't no mystery to it. No Twilight Zone shit. No FBI, CIA cover-ups. I mean, it literally it is exactly what it looks like. Tupac just ended up fighting the wrong guy that night, who was a hardcore gangbanger, and that guy retaliated with the utmost of lethal force on him, and that was that, Now, before I end the video, because I think one thing that is interesting is, of course, you can't talk about the Tupac death without the Biggie death. Now, as much as I know about the Tupac death, it seemed like Biggie's death still has a certain shroud of mystery about it, where I still haven't seen like enough concrete evidence to where everyone has a consensus to say this is the guy that did it, right? Like there are different, you hear stories about like some Muslim guy with a bow tie and things like that. There are a couple names that float around, but it's not nearly as cut and dry and laid out as the Tupac murder. So I think the whole Biggie situation is still kind of interesting for the fact that there's still a little bit of mystery about it. But Tupac situation is, I mean, it's right there. Just look up Keefe D Vlad TV interview. Look up MC8 talking about the Tupac murder. Look up BG Knockout talking about his connection with Orlando Anderson. Like it's all there. All the information is there. It's very simple. It's not complicated. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will see you later.